afternoon. We're going to bring today's budget hearings to order. We only have 2 budgets today. We'll be beginning with the Maryland African American Museum Corporation and hearing from analyst Connor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Connor Brown, Policy Analyst with the Department of Legislative Services, here to present the fiscal 2027 budget analysis for the Maryland African American Museum Corporation, or MAAMC. MAAMC manages the Reginald F. Lewis Museum of Maryland African American History and Culture in Baltimore City. To begin, on page 1 of the analysis, the fiscal 2027 budget for MAAMC increases by $284,955, or 4.9%, to $6.2 million. However, that increase comes from privately raised revenue. State funds are issued to MAAMC as a grant, which is level funded at $2.7 million in fiscal 2027. On page 2, Exhibit 1 shows an overview of agency spending in fiscal 2025. Approximately 57% of expenses in fiscal 25 supported personnel, while the remainder supported museum operations, contracts, events, and community collaboration. Moving on to page 3, Exhibit 2 outlines expenditures and revenues for MAAMC for fiscal 2023 through estimates for fiscal 2027. In fiscal 2025, expenditures exceeded revenues, and while MAAMC projects relatively even expenditures and revenues in fiscal 26, they do project another deficit in fiscal 2027. The primary driver of this is contractual services, which decreased by an estimated 13% in fiscal 2026 before increasing again in fiscal 2027. MAAMC attributes this to fewer temporary exhibit openings in fiscal 26, as well as permanent exhibit openings where expenses have been capitalized. MAAMC should discuss reasons for the fiscal 2025 deficit and any plans to reduce the projected deficit in fiscal 27. On page 4, Exhibit 3 shows the number of donors and dollar value of charitable contributions from fiscal 2019 to 2025. MAAMC saw a large increase in both donors and contributions in fiscal 25 that they attribute primarily to the Lewis Museum's 20th anniversary, which included various celebrations and events throughout the year. The key observation section begins on page 5 with attendance figures for the Lewis Museum. In fiscal 2025, total in-person and virtual attendance increased by almost 30% from fiscal 2024, continuing a trend upward since attendance plummeted during the COVID-19 pandemic. The museum had just over 20,000 general admissions in fiscal 2025, while the other 9,000 were through in-person programming. On page 6, Exhibit 5 shows volunteer and regular volunteer docent numbers for fiscal 18 through 2025. In fiscal 2025, MAAMC saw a decrease in volunteers from 100 in fiscal 2024 to 71 in fiscal 2025. MAAMC attributes this decline to a decrease in the number of corporate volunteer groups. Pages 7 through 9 provide an audit overview of MAAMC, primarily focusing on an August 2025 fiscal compliance audit conducted by the Office of Legislative Audits, or OLA. In this audit, OLA identified 8 total findings, including 1 repeat finding that MAAMC had not established adequate accountability and controls over its art and historical artifacts. In addition to the fiscal compliance audit, OLA conducted a special review of state units exempt from state procurement laws and regulations that was published in November 2025, which is discussed on page 9. In that review, there was 1 finding that pertained to MAAMC regarding gaps in their procurement policy and instances where the policy was not always complied with. MAAMC has noted that they have made policy updates in response to this audit, which are set to be voted on by MAAMC's board next month. Finally, on page 10, DLS concurs with the governor's fiscal 2027 allowance. And with that, I conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much for your analysis. Are there any questions for Connor? Seeing none, thank you so much. We will now hear from the Executive Director, Terry Lee Freeman. Good afternoon.
Oh, I guess I should sit here. Good afternoon. How is everyone? I would have someone else with me, but I think she literally just found a parking space. So by the time she gets finished parking, well, I'll be done. But thank you for this time today. I wanted to just thank you all for your continued support of the Reginald F. Lewis Museum, and we agree with the FY 2027 Legislative Analysts report and appreciate the time that Connor spent understanding our work firsthand. The Lewis remains committed to its mission to document and interpret and preserve the experiences, contributions, and culture of Black Marylanders while serving as a catalyst for education and dialogue. FY 2025 was a strong year, driven by our 20th anniversary programming and 3 major exhibitions. Eyewitness, Media and the Movement highlighted the role of Black Marylanders in securing the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Titan, the legacy of Reginald F. Lewis, tells the story of our namesake from East Baltimore to a landmark $1 billion Wall Street deal. Lynching in Maryland, developed with the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, was supported through a federal appropriation. Attendance did increase significantly, including more than 3,000 visitors during our Juneteenth celebration. School field trips more than doubled, visiting jurisdictions from across the state and Washington, D.C. Membership also increased, and community engagement reached new highs. But like museums nationwide, we are operating in a very challenging fiscal environment. Earned and contributed income declined in the first half of fiscal year 2026 due to reduced admissions, softer corporate giving, and limited federal funding. The projected deficit cited in the analyst report is driven by rising staff, benefit costs, particularly participation in the state pension system, increased fuel and utility costs, and contractual service expenses. Staff costs remain our largest expense, and we have already reduced staffing through attrition. We are actively addressing budget pressures through organizational restructuring and continued attrition to control costs. We're committed to mitigating the deficit without reducing community programming. Energy efficiency upgrades are underway, supported by a capital grant to reduce long-term utility costs. We continue to manage public funds responsibly and transparently. The museum was audited by the Office of Legislative Audits, which did identify 8 findings. We have made progress on or completed 6 of the 8 recommendations. Work is underway to complete the collections inventory and valuation, which was the repeat finding. We are now supported by staff and interns to do this work. We have strengthened internal controls, including separating duties related to special events and financial processes. To stabilize revenue and expand impact, we are focusing on 3 priority audiences: Gen Z and millennials through programs like our new culturally curated program, children through the new Kid Zone, which welcomed nearly 600 children during its soft opening on King Day, seniors through the upcoming Golden Hours program. We're also expanding partnerships, including our satellite gallery with Whiting Turner in West Baltimore at their Touchpoint facility. The Reginald F. Lewis Museum is a vital cultural and educational asset for Maryland. State support allows us to continue serving diverse audiences, preserving history, and providing access to meaningful learning experiences. We appreciate your continued support and partnership and look forward to working together to ensure the museum's long-term sustainability and public impact. Thank you so much for your time. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Yep, seeing none. I just want to say that my cousins were visiting from Detroit for the Lions-Ravens game, and while they did win the game against the Ravens, the second best highlight of the trip was going to the museum. They really enjoyed themselves there, so I just want to say thank you for what you're providing, not just to our state, but to many of our tourists and visitors that visit Baltimore as well. Delegate Grice, do you represent Dorchester? Okay, because I noticed that that was probably the only shore county that I saw that had some field trip visits, so maybe we have some work to do to expand.
So Dorchester did come to.
It's
they
so
did.
nice as well, very nice.
We had 9 counties, and we hope to grow
Yeah, we wanna
as
grow
many
that.
counties as possible to come visit the museum.
And we know you have your work cut out for you. Thank you for the work you're doing to comply with the joint, with the audit, expectations. And so I would say for us, the big priority is having everything archived for insurance purposes.
Yes.
Because that's important.
Yes. We understand we have like nearly 14,000 objects,
lot.
and for a long time, we did not have a collections manager.
Right.
And it's not the type of work that you can just say, oh, let's get some volunteers in
No.
here and do this.
They
They
gotta know what
have
they're
to be
doing.
skilled in what they're doing.
Yes, well,
But thank
we
you
wish
for your
luck on that.
patience.
Thank you for all that you're doing for the state. And that concludes the budget hearing for Maryland African American Museum Corporation. Up next will be the Maryland State Department of Education headquarters budget, and we'll begin with the analysis from Catherine Barber.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Are we ready? All right. For the record, my name is Catherine Barber, and I'll be presenting the DLS budget analysis for MSDE headquarters. Starting on page 1 with the operating budget summary, the fiscal 27 budget for MSD headquarters increases by $14.7 million, or 3.7%, to $409.7 million. Turning to the performance analysis section on page 6, Exhibit 1 shows MSDE's Managing for Results measure for retention of teachers of color. 3-year retention stayed relatively flat across demographics from fiscal 24 to 25 at 73.8% and remains below the goal of 75% by the 26-27 school year. Turning to page 8, Exhibit 2 shows outcomes for the Division of Rehabilitative Services, or DOORS. In fiscal 25, 1,044 disabled students achieved an employment outcome, which is an increase of 3.5% from fiscal 24, but remains below the agency's target by a few hundred students. Additionally, 8,290 disabled students received pre-employment transition services, which is a 23.5% increase from fiscal 24 and exceeded the service target. On page 9, there's a discussion of MSDE's fiscal 25 closeout. The 2025 Joint Chairman's Report requested MSDE and the Maryland Center for School Safety submit a report on fiscal 25 closeout. MSDE reported large amounts of unspent and encumbered federal and special funds. The largest unspent balance was $97 million in federal funds for food services. MSDE also encumbered $104 million in federal funds for Title I programs and $88 million for special education grants. MSDE should comment on the reasons for continuously encumbering large amounts of funds, particularly in regard to DOORS federal funds. Additionally, while MSDE provided its own closeout information, the agency did not include the required MCSS data in the submission. MSDE should explain why its JCR response did not include the required information from MCSS. MCSS should discuss fiscal 25 encumbered and unspent funds excluded from the report and explain any reverted or canceled school safety grants. Like last year, DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting a report on accounting practices and closeout data. In regard to fiscal 26 legislative additions, Section 21 of the fiscal 26 budget bill added $250,000 in general funds to support the establishment of a pilot program for commercial driver's license education and licensing as part of the state's technical education curriculum. MSDE conducted a study into program feasibility and concluded that CDL programs are not feasible in high schools due to the age requirements for Class C licenses and interstate licensing, high program costs, and low student interest. MSDE should discuss how much of the legislative addition has been spent on the feasibility study and how much of the remaining funding will be reverted. Turning to page 11, Exhibit 3 provides an overview of agency spending. The division with the largest allowance is DOORS, which receives $171 million, or 42% of the budget. On page 12, Exhibit 4 breaks out the changes from fiscal 26 to 27. The allowance increases by $14.7 million after accounting for deficiency appropriations. Most of the growth is in personnel costs, which increased by $13.3 million. Additionally, the allowance includes a nearly $6 million increase in the Division of Finance due to the realignment of federal funds from the Division of Early Childhood. MSDE plans to distribute these funds as needed to its grant programs. Other large increases include $4.4 million for assessment contracts, $3.3 million in the Division of Instructional Programs for Expert Review Teams, and $2.7 million in the Division of Student Support and Federal Programs for Behavioral Mental Health Training and Grants. MSDE should explain the reasons for large increases to special fund grants within these divisions. The discussion of personnel begins on page 14. Both fiscal 26 and 27 had 1,180 authorized regular positions. As of December 31st, 2025, MSDE headquarters and its independent agencies reported 99.5 vacancies, with 42 sitting vacant for over 6 months. The issue section begins on page 15. Issue 1 discusses a fiscal compliance audit published a few weeks ago that flagged issues with oversight of hiring, licensing, and financial management. Regarding hiring and licensing oversight, the Office of Legislative Audits determined that MSDE did not establish proper procedures to ensure that LEAs properly screened employees for past disciplinary action or criminal activity that disqualified them from working with children. In addition, many LEAs were not enrolled in the required public safety monitoring systems for alerts about employee criminal activity. MSDE also approved educator licenses without adequate independent review and did not monitor whether educators were teaching the specific subjects for which they were licensed. As for financial management oversight, OLA identified lost revenue and unverified spending across several programs. For one, MSDE did not pursue federal reimbursement in a timely manner, resulting in approximately $3.6 million in lost investment interest for the state. MSDE had also not claimed $20.7 million in federal COVID-19 relief funds after a clerical error led the agency to return a larger federal payment without refiling for the correct amount. As of December 2025, MSDE had recovered $4 million of these funds. The agency should provide an update on the status of the remaining $16.7 million awaiting reimbursement. Additionally, MSDE did not properly document the amount of federal funds that it was owed or how much it had collected in fiscal 24 and 25. For fiscal 25, MSDE could not provide documentation that 6 of its 10 accrued revenue entries, totaling $176 million, accurately reflected total amounts collectible from the federal government. In some cases, MSDE appears to have over-reported fiscal 25 revenues, while in other cases, the agency reported that it had not been paid at all. MSDE should provide an update on reconciling the discrepancies in revenue received and recovering any remaining accrued revenue entries. Moreover, OLA received referrals to its waste, fraud, and abuse hotline alleging that MSDE awarded $1.2 million in grants and contracts without a competitive process. In one instance, MSDE non-competitively awarded $700,000 to a vendor and paid the full sum upfront, but later could not provide documentation that any of the contracted services had been provided. There were several other instances of MSDE awarding smaller non-competitive contracts and receiving little to no proof of services in return. As a result, OLA referred its concerns to the Office of the Attorney General's Criminal Division. Finding 11 of OLA's report indicated that MSDE also failed to process reimbursement requests from the 21st Century Community Learning Center in a timely manner. This program provides after-school, before-school, and summer educational programming for students in high poverty and low-performing public schools. Auditors identified that between January 2023 and May 2025, it took MSDE more than 100 days to pay $10.1 million in reimbursements, with some requests sitting for nearly a year. MSDE should provide an update on the status of its corrective actions in response to the audit. DLS recommends adding budget bill language restricting $100,000 pending a report describing how MSDE has implemented OLA feedback and corrective actions for hiring and licensing oversight, financial management, and timely reimbursements. Issue 2 begins at the bottom of page 17 and discusses the rollout of MSDE's new literacy policy. The agency's policy establishes an evidence-based framework for literacy instruction, early identification of reading challenges, intervention, and grade promotion decisions. The agency plans to screen all students in kindergarten through 3rd grade 3 times a year to proactively identify students who may face challenges with reading. Those students will then receive a diagnostic assessment and an individualized student reading improvement plan, or SRIP. Starting in the 26-27 school year, LEAs will be required to implement personalized SRIPs to support students in kindergarten through 3rd grade. Then, beginning in the 27-28 school year, 3rd graders must meet reading benchmarks to move on to 4th grade. These changes are being implemented using $47.2 million in federal and nonprofit grants. The agency has awarded subgrants to 15 LEAs as of summer 2025. MSDE should provide an update on any changes to this timeline or implementation plan for the new literacy policy. Issue 3 begins on the bottom of page 19 with a discussion of MCAP assessment contract costs. Exhibit 5 on the next page shows costs over 3 years, with the fiscal 27 allowance including $54.9 million for MCAP contracts. As you can see in the exhibit, MCAP contracts have required significant deficiency appropriations for 2 years in a row. MSDE received a $10 million deficiency appropriation in fiscal 25 and $12.2 million in fiscal 26, representing nearly a quarter of the total appropriation for each year. MSDE should discuss the reason for the increase in assessment costs and the agency's efforts to reduce expenses. The last issue in this analysis discusses the School Safety Fund. Exhibit 6 on page 21 shows school safety grant funding from fiscal 24 to 27. The fiscal 27 allowance includes $16.6 million for grants and $3.7 million for operations. The grant budget includes $6 million in general funds and $10.6 million in special funds. $13 million will ultimately support the School Resource Officer Grant Program. For several years, MCSS has reported large SSF balance amounts, citing low LEA utilization. MCSS should comment on how much of the fiscal 26 special fund appropriation it actually expects will be spent, and DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting that MCSS submit a report on the balance, obstacles to utilization, and LEA participation, and potential solutions. Notably, the allowance does not contain funds for the Secure Schools Emergency Response Grant, which MCSS is required to establish by September 2026. MCSS should discuss its plans to establish the program by the mandated deadline, including the program's funding source. Recommended actions start on page 23, and the section starting on page 28 has an update on MSDE's major IT projects, as well as MFR measures for MCSS and the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center. That concludes my presentation, and I can take any questions now.
Thank you, Ms. Barber, for your presentation. Vice Chair Wolek.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I have just a quick question on the $700,000 contract. Did you have the date for that, for when that happened?
Not off the top of my head. I can send you the information from the audit, though.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Delegate Grace?
Yeah, I only caught one where we want to hold funding for $100,000 with the findings for that, I think is what you're referring to. But there were a lot more findings than just that. So are you recommending that we only hold $100,000 for all the findings or just that one?
It's $100,000 for all of the findings.
Okay.
there were additional findings related to early childhood that will be discussed in that analysis.
Well, okay, very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. At this time, we'll hear from the superintendent, Wright, and team. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Carrie Wright, State Superintendent of Schools. With me today are Donna Gunning, the Chief Financial Officer, and Krishna Chalur, our Chief Operating Officer. Also, Kate Bryant is here from the Maryland Center for School Safety, and Ross is here for MLDS. So if you've got questions, they're here to answer your questions as well. Okay. I want to take a moment to thank you for your support and your commitment to education, and also to thank Ms. Catherine Barber for her thorough analysis. Maryland's support for public education is the envy of the nation. When we travel across the country and engage with other state leaders, Maryland stands out for its sustained commitment, its willingness to follow the evidence, and its focus on long-term outcomes rather than short-term fixes. That is due in large part to the partnership and collaboration of this body. The State Board has set a goal for Maryland to rank amongst the top 10 states in reading on both the 4th and 8th grade NAEP assessments. And over the past 2 years, we have begun to see meaningful progress in our students' literacy and mathematics achievement. The percentage of students scoring proficient or advanced in English language arts has increased from 45.3 in 2023 to 50.8 in 2025. And in mathematics, proficiency increased from 21% to 26.5% that same time period. Low-income students' ELA scores increased by 11 percentage points. This progress reflects a renewed focus on the instructional core, strong teaching, high-quality materials, and engaged students in classrooms across Maryland. The State Board and the Maryland State Department of Education serve as proud stewards of the blueprint for Maryland's future. Our commitment to the blueprint's success is reflected in our new Maryland Momentum strategic plan. The new plan aligns all department goals and strategies directly to the blueprint's pillars. Our strategic plan emphasizes evidence-based strategies, targeted investments in students with the greatest needs, and preparing Maryland students for long-term economic success. It follows the blueprint structure and is organized around the 5 pillars. And here are some highlights of our progress. 74% increase in the number of children with access to high-quality full-day pre-kindergarten programs. We have placed state teacher coaches in 14 Prince George's County Public Schools through philanthropic support in advance of the Academic Excellence Program Teacher Coaches rollout. $19.4 million Grow Your Own Educators Grant Program guidance and application have been released to the LEAs and higher ed. More than 50% of our schools in the state are implementing the community schools model. After nearly 2 years of work, the Assessment and Accountability Task Force provided direction for the Maryland School Report Card that better rewards schools for academic growth, increases fairness for schools serving under-resourced communities, and makes schools' composite scores more easily understandable to educators and to the public. In the fall of 2025, the department issued an RFP for a new statewide assessment system that incorporates all the components needed in one contract. The streamlined approach to a new contract allows for more efficiencies and cost savings. The Board of Public Works approved the 5-year contract with NCS Pearson at the end of January. We have more work to do as we seek to capitalize on the sustained statewide progress, and we look forward to continuing these efforts with the partnership of the Governor and the General Assembly. MSDE's responses to the analyst-specific questions are in our testimony, and MSDE agrees with the analyst recommendations, and we are here to answer your questions.
Did you want to, oh. Delegate Grice?
Can you just comment on that $700 million? That's a pretty big deal, it seems to me. And I rather than reading the testimony, I'd rather hear directly from you. Yeah.
Yeah, that was something that occurred under my predecessor. So that was prior to my arrival. And my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was that it was awarded just as it is stated.
It's 700,000.
It's 700,000, not million.
Was the work completed? I mean, is there a paper
So I
trail
can let
to
you know that I canceled that contract as soon as I came on board in October of '23.
Okay, so it has not been paid then? Is that what you're saying? Or it has been paid and
I think
I'm confused. Or is everyone else?
No, the money has gone out the door. The problem is that the way it was handled was not appropriately handled. And I can't speak to that because it was under my predecessor.
Any other additional questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for your oh, sorry, Vice Chair Bullock, we're back.
Sorry, I thought you meant on this issue.
Yeah.
I had a question on the hate crimes grants.
Say it
The
again.
hate crimes grants, we've experienced, unfortunately, a lot of anti-Semitism and anti-Islamic.
I'm going to ask Kate to come up and respond to
Sure.
that. That's under school safety.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a sense of sort of how those work, to your understanding of how effective they are in sort of curbing some of that.
Sure, I'll introduce myself for the record. Kate Bryan, Executive Director of the Maryland Center for School Safety, and with me is Gifty Quarshi, who's our Director of Administration. So I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I was referring to the hate crimes grant. It looks like it's about $3 million.
Yes.
There have been issues, at least in MCPS, Montgomery County, of which I'm a part of, both with anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hate that, our children are experiencing. So I wanted to just understand the grant, how effective it is,
Sure.
Sort of how it works. If you could shed a little bit of light on that.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll talk sort of high-level operational, and then if you have specific questions about numbers and dollars and things like that, Gifty can take care of that. So it has been around for a few years, and it is incredibly effective. So when the grant was first issued, the first year was about $1 million. It got increased to $2 million the next year, and it's been $3 million since that time. We actually have, I believe last year we had 124 applicants. That includes private schools, non-public special education facilities, as well as the ability for public schools to apply for that grant too. It's been very effective. They use it, they can use it for security initiatives. That includes personnel, so security personnel, as well as security-based equipment, right? So technology, facility improvements, fencing, things like that.
Thank you.
Sure,
Appreciate it.
absolutely.
Delegate Tolles.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I had a question. I'm sorry, I stepped up to get some tissue, but I wanted to know regarding, to know about the 14 schools that you said you sent teacher coaches to in
They're going to
Prince
be,
George's County?
yes. So
I don't
we've
know
been
if you
working
can
with Prince
mention
George's County. This is money that we obtained from philanthropy. It's about $5.8 million, and that will be used to hire state-led and state-hired coaches. Those schools were identified based on our data. Those schools are the lowest, probably some of the lowest performing in Prince George's County. And so there will be 7 coaches that will be assigned over 14 schools in Phase 1, and we're hoping then Phase 2 will add an additional 14, 15 coaches, am I right? 15 coaches by the fall of next year.
Can you send my office a list of those schools?
Absolutely.
As well, and I guess your strategy for improving them with the coaches, what they will be doing, and some of the steps they will be taking to improve those schools?
Absolutely. The coaches are assigned to teach teachers how to better improve their teaching ability where literacy is concerned. So they work directly 5 days a week with a teacher or multiple teachers inside a school. That's all they do. They're not doing recess duty, lunch duty, bus duty, testing duty. They don't have those kinds of duties. They're strictly there to be making sure that they're developing relationships with teachers. They give teachers feedback. They can model lessons. They can provide assistance even to the principal in designing a strong literacy program. So they're strictly there to make sure that the capacity of our teachers is improved, and therefore, when that improves, then student achievement also improves. There's a lot of research to support this job-embedded strategy.
Okay, thank you. Within your agency, do you have someone here, or could you tell me what the process is or what the cost attributed to researching and implementing new curriculum in the schools, within the school system throughout the state of Maryland, in an effort to keep up with, say, for example, taking, this is just an example, taking books regarding Black history or some other minorities out of the school system, implementing new programs. Do you have someone within your agency that looks at that on a regular basis to determine how we could implement new changes to schools within the state of Maryland? For example, like human trafficking curriculum. Could you talk about if you have some, or could you let me know if you have someone within your agency that focuses just on new curriculum?
Not just one person. There's a lot of people. In fact, we just revised all of our content standards in every single subject area. So that was math, English language arts, which included reading, science, social studies, was just revised, health and PE, and I'm missing one. No, I think that's it for, what am I missing? That's it for now. But each of those have their own departments. So if you're talking about social studies and the kinds of issues that you're having, then our process is we convened a group of people that are experts in those areas. So if we were looking at social studies, then we brought in social studies teachers and other outside experts where that's concerned. We took a look, because our content standards had not been updated in probably 10 years or more. And so we just went through that entire process to make sure that all of that was up to date, including that. We had a lot of input, obviously, from the General Assembly. When the Educate to Stop the Hate committee was formed, and we absolutely folded all of that into our new content standards in social studies. So that's something that's ongoing. Just like now, as we're getting ready to craft and implement a brand new assessment, then we give those content standards to the assessment vendor and say, you need to build your items around the content of what we're expecting children to know and be able to do, so that by the time the spring assessment rolls around, the teachers will have taught those standards throughout the school year.
Okay, thank you. I am new to the committee, so I would love if you could set up within my office, like next week, the individual that's in charge of the social studies and the health and PE curriculums. And when they come, could they please let me know what funds are appropriated to those two particular subject matters?
So we can let you know what our budget looks like generally, but if you're talking about school systems, that's
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I was saying to revise the curriculum.
Oh, we can
what
give you
it
that.
take, you know, for you to do that process over, you know, because it had not been done in 10 years.
Yep.
What did it cost for you to do those revisions or update those revisions in the curriculum?
We can give you that guesstimate for sure.
Great, thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Sure. Oh, I didn't see you, Delegate Forbes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Superintendent Wright. I'm going to ask you about doors, and the numbers seem to be trending in the right direction with students being helped and assisted. But I know from personal stories and stories from constituents, it still seems like an exercise in frustration for some people. Is there something we can do to improve the user experience in the doors program?
So this is the chief over that serves over doors. So can you repeat that question while he was walking up? Yeah.
I've heard from constituents and family members that the doors program can be just an exercise in frustration, years-long exercise in frustration. And so I wondered whether you could is it because of it's a federal program and you are required to do certain things in a certain way that people might feel it's ineffective, or is there something we can do to streamline the process? And I know the individuals you were working with are individuals and they have individual needs, and I'm certain that that is part of the issue, but I just wondered if there was more we could be doing.
Sure. Jeff?
Yeah, and I would say a large part of it is supply and demand. The need is great in trying to serve. One of the things that we have reduced, if you look at key metric for us, is our time on case. One of the key metrics for us is processing cases, and we have reduced, when we started this work about 2 years ago, reviewing it, we were currently at that time number 52 out of 53 jurisdictions nationwide. Most recently, within as of December. That had been reduced down to number 26 in ranking as far as processing time. So there is an increase that has been observed in processing cases, but there's also at the same time, we have a backlog caseload and trying to process through that as well. And then staying within the regulations and how they would be able to provide certain services, because not all services can be provided to consumers.
Is there something that we could advocate for that would make an improvement in the work that you do?
I mean, more staff.
More staff.
Because we're currently trying to fill the void, not only with existing staff, but also with overtime coverage to try to maintain balance.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Vice Chair Bullock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Wright, for your leadership. You know, joining an agency is, there's a past and there's a future that you're trying to build. So I really appreciate your commitment and your sense of purpose that you bring to this work. I really admire that. I am wondering, as you sit in that seat and you're looking at the organizations, you know, there are a number of issues that were raised by the analyst. Where do you think the agency still has work to do? And where do you think you are turning the corner? The question relates less to the work in terms of programming outside, but more looking internally in terms of the weaknesses that you still feel need to be corrected and things that you think, again, are turning the corner. Thank you.
One of the things that I wanted to bring up was there's a little bit of confusion around what MSDE is responsible for, where licensing is concerned, and what the districts are responsible for. Many states have the licensing piece housed in one location, meaning the state agency typically. When I was a state superintendent in Mississippi, we had an entire team, and all licenses came through the agency for approval and review. In Maryland, it is now in 24 different jurisdictions. So it is on each jurisdiction to look at the license, make sure that the license is valid, make sure that the teachers are teaching within their area of certification. And we tried to explain this to OLA at the time that we had our exit conference. What we have been doing, because we don't have staff to do that, I think in Mississippi, I think I had between 8 and 10 members. You've got twice the number of licenses here, so I'd need a team of about 20 to 25 if we move that inside, and I'm not saying that's a bad idea. But I think what we've tried to do is then come up with a way to audit the districts using a certain percentage, you know, each year, but that's just exactly what it is. It's a certain percentage. There's no way we would have the staff to audit 100% of the licenses across the state. We just simply don't. So we have to rely on our LEA partners to do that work for us. That's one thing that I think that we're still going to struggle with that, I think, over the years. I think where we're really turning the corner is instruction. I think that we've sent a very clear and powerful message around how we expect reading to be taught. We have developed very strong policies in both literacy and mathematics. We're getting ready to introduce an adolescent literacy policy that's now out, going to be for public comment. We've strengthened our CTE programs across the state. We've done a lot around career-connected learning, industry-recognized credentials. I think that the message has been very consistent and very consistent around the blueprint expectations. Our CCR standards, you know, right out of the blueprint, and we're leaning in very heavily to make sure that we are monitoring all districts around CCR. But I think that we are really blessed to have 24 very strong superintendents. That is not the case in every state. And I think they're out there doing an amazing job. They have been very receptive to policy changes that we know that need to take place. But when you're dealing with, right now, a 50% proficiency rate in reading and a 28% proficiency rate in mathematics, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And so we're trying to put structures in place that will drive instruction to the place that we need it to be. We have really focused focused on the instructional core like no other. We've been focusing on making sure that districts are having high-quality instructional materials to put in front of children. We are putting a list of screeners together that we know that we need children screened at least 3 times a year. And so we've put a list together for the superintendent to take a look at. In our new assessment system that's coming online, the beauty of it is under one vendor. We are saving millions of dollars every year because of this new assessment. But in addition to that, we've been able to purchase interim assessments in grades 3 through 8, which will then free up money if the districts decide to use our interim assessments that will be aligned to our spring assessment. That will free money up on assessments that they are currently purchasing that they're using internally. So I think I've had very positive feedback from the superintendents that they're looking forward to having something like that will then free up their money, but also give them more predictability around how students are doing on interim assessments, and then can anticipate then how children might be doing on the spring assessment. So there's a lot that we're putting in place, a lot of structures that we're putting in place, but we have a lot of feedback loops. I meet with the superintendents on a regular basis. I've got a principal's advisory, a teacher's advisory. We're forming a student advisory. I've got a family advisory. I meet with them on a regular basis to get input from them. And so we've tried to really create those feedback loops for everybody that touches education to make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing and making sure that we're monitoring student achievement very, very closely, because that's the essence. Are we doing our job? And that's how we know our children achieving, and that's our job.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I have a question that probably kind of is a good companion for your last remarks. So we saw within the analysis that there were considerable deficiency spending around the assessment costs. And just wanted to know if you could further just unpack kind of where you identified those overruns and maybe how you're going to prevent them moving forward.
If you want to, go ahead, and then I'll chime in. Go ahead. Sure.
Madam Chair, the existing assessment contracts with MSD go back several years. They go back to 2018, 2019, and the contract was awarded to 3 different vendors at that time, and they were doing parts of the work. So there is work overlap, additional resources, all of that adds to cost. In addition, during COVID, the assessments did not take place, and subsequently, when under the former administration, there were some changes made to the contract and scope of the contract. So all of that together and the redundancy in how the contracts are currently set up with multiple vendors resulted in cost overruns. That was articulated by our analyst in the presentation. So, sorry. So the new contract, as was awarded and presented and awarded by BPW on January 28th, consolidates all the work under one vendor, thereby streamlining the process as well as the cost savings that were realized by that. And it's the details are in our response.
I'm going to add one more comment to that.
Just quickly.
Sure.
I am not easily irritated, but we do hear what the analyst says. So if I ask you to unpack it further, do not remind me that the analyst said it, because this is for the clarity of the people that are listening, to remind them what we're talking about. So we did hear her, but we were asking you to further distill it. Yes, Madam Superintendent. Yeah,
and that, just to add on to that, anytime you change a contract and you change the scope, there's a cost. And there was not the oversight that there should have been, and that has been remediated. So now we have a process. If you're intending to change a scope, that's got to come all the way up to me. So that will prevent a lot of what had happened in the past.
Thank you for that answer. That's very helpful for not just us, but the folks that are listening as well. Did you have anything to add, sir? You're just making facial. I just want to make sure I was acknowledging.
No.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions for anyone here? Thank you for your time. We do have some public testimony. We have one favorable witness. Is Jennifer Zuckerman here? Make your way down. Take your time. And also, is Jamisa Fawcett Williams here as well? And is Abigail Snyder? Yeah. Okay, great. I think there's a mic for everyone. You can go ahead and get started.
Okay. a very large Israeli flag, the word Hebrew prominently displayed on the side of the building, and a Montgomery County police car with flashing lights. My name is Jennifer Zuckerman, and I'm here representing one of the 124 schools who receive money from the Hate Crimes Grant. I represent 820 students and 250 staff members that call the Melvin J. Berman Hebrew Academy a Jewish day school home. We call ourselves Diapers to Diplomas because we have 2-year-olds all the way through 12th graders. I want to express gratitude for the past funding for the Hate Crimes Grant, particularly for the $3 million that has remained steady over the years, and to ask you to please consider an increase. I'm also here representing the Jewish Community Relations Council of Greater Washington, who is also tremendously in support of this funding. I want to tell you a little bit about what this funding has enabled us to do. We run a very tight budget. We have a very modest parent body who is pretty tapped out as far as tuition and just life. And this funding has enabled us to hire off-duty Montgomery County police officers who help monitor our building, monitor our perimeter. They provide deterrence in terms of a car and an officer walking around. They have relationships with our students and our staff. They know who belongs, and more importantly, they know who does not belong. This funding is not just for Jewish schools. It's for all the schools that are facing this kind of threat, and the threats, as we all know, have increased tremendously. But over time, as the risks have increased, grant has become more competitive, and funding per schools have decreased. So that's why we're here today asking for increased funding. And again, to thank you for your past support, ask again for your consideration of an increase from $3 million to $5 million for the Hate Crimes Grant. And I promise you, this will not only help our vulnerable populations feel safer, it will also show that the state and the county and the people of Maryland care about every person, no matter their religion, no matter their background. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Whoever would like to go next?
Do you want to go?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. My name is Jamesa Fawcett-Williams. I'm a Doors counselor, and I serve as the president of ASME Local 3644, representing the dedicated employees of the Maryland State Department of Education. Our members work every day to support Maryland students, child care providers, and disabled citizens by administering critical program, overseeing grants, and ensuring compliance with the state and federal requirements. While we may not be in the classroom, our work directly impacts the most vulnerable citizens of Maryland. As you review this budget, I respectfully urge that you protect funding for MSDE operations and ensure fair, competitive compensation for the skilled professionals who keep our educational systems running. As you know, we are facing growing uncertainty due to reductions and delays in federal education funding. When expected federal dollars are cut or frozen, the responsibility shifts to the state. Without stable state support, those gaps can result in staffing strains, higher caseloads, program reductions, and ultimately affect the local school systems and our consumers. Supporting Maryland State Department of Education and its dedicated staff ensure that the programs run smoothly. I ask the committee to please continue to provide the resources needed to strengthen both the department and the workforce that make it all possible. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Ms. Snyder.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. For the record, Abby Snyder, Director of Government Relations for the Baltimore Jewish Council, which represents the Associated Jewish Federation of Baltimore, all of its agencies, and the organized Jewish community of the greater Baltimore region. I'm also here today to talk about the Hate Crimes Grant Fund under the Center for School Safety, and thank you so much, Delegate Wolek, for asking a question and letting us go into a little bit more detail on that on the last panel. It is such an effective program, and here today also to ask for a $2 million increase, understanding the tight budget restrictions you all are under. There's a couple reasons for this. One of them is that, as you all hear constantly, the $10 million under GoCap for hate crimes grants. This $10 million pot is no longer available to our schools and child care centers to also apply to. They were never able to double dip, but they were able to at least apply to both pots and have a better chance of receiving some funding. There also were $6 million worth of requests in the past 2 years for this $3 million pot. And again, with not having another option to apply for, that's leaving other schools kind of in the dark there with funding that they desperately need. And the one other piece that is really important for you to understand, the FEMA hate crimes grants, the rubric for how the scoring of who is getting these grants has shifted in the past year. And so any institution that has applied since 2005 is at a 15-point disadvantage now in their 40-point rubric. So any institution that is a new one that is applying can now receive an immediate 15-point advantage. And as you can imagine, those institutions that are at risk of hate crimes have likely since 2005 applied for this money and probably received something. So there's just a handful of reasons why this increase is really necessary, and we hope you'll be able to consider and find something in the cushions to add to this grant fund. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder, for your testimony. Are there any questions for the panel? Seeing none, we thank you, all three of you, for your time today and the work that you do in your communities and on behalf of Marylanders. And that actually concludes all testimony on this particular budget and concludes all budget hearings for today. Have a great afternoon, everyone.